At the latest Stigler antitrust conference, there was one of your adversaries, Shaw Ether, who is the senior vice president of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And he said, "Oh, we respect Chairman Khan, we respect everything, etc. But these people were trying to change the antitrust without passing to Congress." And with a little bit of gut, he said, "We're very democratic, and so we want this stuff to take place only when it has the seal of approval of the representative of the American people." So, what is your reaction to this criticism?
Well, look, I think the most radically anti democratic action that was taken in antitrust was to decide that enforcers didn't have to enforce the law, right? I mean, you have laws like the Robinson-Patman Act, which goes back all the way to the 1930s, which the FTC and DOJ decided just didn't sound sensible to them. And so they just were going to stop enforcing it. I mean, that is grotesquely undemocratic and actually really threatens the rule of law. Similarly, we've seen efforts to import into antitrust values or words or standards that appear nowhere in the text of what Congress wrote, nowhere in the text of the opinions that the Supreme Court has been issuing. And so I think we were actually looking to undo a lot of the anti democratic work that had been done in prior administrations to pretend that the antitrust laws are not actually about, checking against extreme concentrations of economic power and making sure that we have checks and balances in the commercial sphere through market competition.
Do we need new laws? Was there ever a moment at which you were frustrated by the limits of the existing laws? And do the existing laws, will they serve us well in a world of AI? Or does Congress need to be thinking about what actually new laws should make sense?
Certainly there's always an opportunity for clarification, for correction. I think we're going to learn a lot in the coming years, given that a lot of these big tech cases are now resulting in opinions from courts. And so Congress can look at, say, the verdicts being issued on Google and the future on Facebook and Amazon and figure out, are these laws fit for purpose? I think one area that we're going to have to keep monitoring very closely, where we also have cases in flux, is this issue of algorithmic collusion and what happens when it's basically these algorithms that are facilitating effectively price fixing. We've seen, really troubling allegations against this company, RealPage. We've seen similar lawsuits in the context of hotels, where basically the defense is arguing that there isn't really collusion happening because the algorithm, for example, is just recommending that these hotels or landlords use those prices. That, for example, is an area where I think Congress would need to weigh in.
We have very sophisticated listeners, but I wonder how many of our listeners actually know what the Robinson-Patman Act is. In fact, I recommend our listeners to send an email for those who really knew before this podcast. And we're going to draw some T-shirts as a present. So, can you explain to our listeners what is Robinson-Patman and why is important to enforce it today?
At its core, it prevents large retailers from securing special terms that are not being made available to other players. And if major retailers are, for example, asking for quantity discounts or volume discounts because of the efficiencies and the cost differentials that are resulting from that, that is fair game. But what they're not able to do is just use their raw muscle and bargaining power to say, I want you to give me a better deal than that smaller store down the road. And so this was a law that has stopped being enforced. And I would routinely hear from independent grocers and wholesalers that the terms that they were being offered by big suppliers were actually higher prices than what is on the shelves at the big box stores at the retail level, which is just shocking. And especially for rural areas, the lack of enforcement of Robinson-Patman has been pretty devastating. There's research and reporting actually drawing a line between the drop in Robinson-Patman enforcement and the rise of food deserts. And so it was a top priority to reinvigorate this area of law. We brought two lawsuits, one against Southern Glazers and the other against Pepsi. Both of them are pursuing, and the agency just defeated Southern Glazers' efforts to dismiss the lawsuit.
The Wall Street Journal published over 80 editorials criticizing your approach. People called for your firing, from Reid Hoffman to Musk to Barry Diller. Were you surprised by the extent of the pushback, and did it affect you at all? And I know they're kind of two different questions, but they're sort of the same.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't too surprised. I think what was striking was just seeing that, for a certain class of company or business executive, there was this basic level of feeling offended that the law was being applied to them and that they had to follow the rules. And, it is true that at an agency like the FTC, it is very easy to say, okay, I'm going to focus on the fraudsters and the scammers and these fly by night guys who are doing a lot of harm, and look the other way when it comes to the big eyes. And I think one thing that I wanted to avoid was this kind of two tiers of justice, right? Where we kind of bring down the hammers on the small businesses, but go pretty light on the big businesses. And I think that kind of even-handed approach to enforcing the law is really critical, because not doing that, I think, contributes to real cynicism and disillusionment with government, to think that, there's special access and special favors and sweetheart deals that are available to some and not others.